what would be your advice when teaching small group reformer classes to older populations with pathology, all in one class setting? And this is something we get a lot. And I think the key thing is you set the expectation of what that class is called in the beginning. That's why I will call my classes Gentle Pilates. And I put in the description, we will be slowing way down for modifications, for this and that. So somebody doesn't pop in there expecting to be like, da, 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 da. And it's just like, no, we're going to be taking our time. And the other thing is I always look at like, who is, you kind of got to know who's the person that is most at risk, who is maybe going to need the most help. And I will think in my head, how can I actually design a class that can actually get that person moving, but will have elements that are going to benefit everybody else. So I almost will teach it from there, from the lowest, kind of the lowest common denominator up. But with that, sometimes it happens not unexpectedly. I have a class that's a little higher level, and somehow they found, somebody had an issue and they find themselves in this class, and it's like, oh, there was all of, my plan that I wanted to go right deep over here, and that's okay. It's just, you just have to sort of, once again, really understand, well, what are your intentions that you want to do in the class and what positions? And then maybe it's just giving everybody in the class, say, hey, today, we're really going to explore this movement a lot more, a little deeper in a way that maybe you haven't felt. And so I'll take it deep instead of necessarily taking it slow. So the taking it slow kind of says, oh, we're doing an easy class, but we're going to go deep with this stuff. We're going to really think about what are we truly doing? And that's just a nice way. I think you just have to, I think the toughest thing is just mentally setting everybody up with the expectation.
Agreed. One of the things in answer to this question as well, I love the challenge of diversity in a class. But one of the things that typically happens is most of the people are familiar with your class that are in the class, unless you're teaching a guest class for somebody. But usually your class, if there's 6 people, there's 4 that are there all the time, and there's 1 that's there part-time, and there's somebody new that's coming in. So you learn that mixture of verbal cueing, directing the rhythm and the tempo, while you might be over giving some hands-on tactile cueing or re-educating or modifying to the 1 or 2 students. The challenge of that, and it always is the challenge to all of us, is how do I keep the rhythm of the 4 going and even challenging when I am doing the modification to the 1 or 2 in the class. And that's just something that comes with experience. But if you have in the back of your mind that my goal is to keep the 4, whatever that 4 is, running through the class, so you're not leaving them holding 100 position while you're trying to teach somebody how to get their shoulder blades up off the ground for the 100 position. You're able to keep the tempo and say, keep that tempo, and then you're counting out maybe every 10 counts while you're still giving the cueing to the 1. And those are the kind of things that are talents that are built up. And this is what we talk a lot about in our reformer training now. The reformer training really is focusing not only on the physical therapist that wants to add, or they have a reformer in their clinic and they want to know how to use it, because they will, but it also focuses on anybody doing group reformer classes of how to do some of these teaching skills, because inevitably, as Sunit said, we're going to come across those challenges. We're going to come across the challenge of group dynamics.
Oh, I was going to say, one of the things, another the strategy that I will do in those cases as well, is if you got your classes, you put the person that you know is probably going to need the most hands-on in the center of the class. Keep them so that you can have your hands there. And sometimes that's where I am teaching from, and I've got my hands on them and I'm teaching to everybody else to make sure that they're not going to, do something that's going to, get them in trouble.
Yeah. So looking at some of these challenges, obviously we've all had these challenges. So the one that sort of pops out the most here is diversity in the classroom of size, height, length, impairments, abilities, being able to give individual attention. And one of the things I always like to say in this part of the discussion is that sometimes we have, and we've certainly learned this through COVID, we have too high of an expectation of how the performance of our client is going to be. Like we sometimes are trying to have perfect movement in everybody that's in the class. And so we get caught up in what I call, cueing vomit. Like we are just throwing out so many cues, or we're just overloading them instead of just letting them go through the movement and maybe asking a question of, how does that feel? Are you able to do this exercise without stressing your low back? If not, let me know. And a lot of times it's how we structure the language that allows us to deal with the diversity that manifests in the group class. These are tools that we build. It's an experience. I mean, you and I have dealt with that diversity in class, and even some of the risk. Like I saw somebody talking about the risk of somebody getting dizzy, let's say with a standing exercise, and heaven forbid you're doing Russian splits with an advanced group, and you have one person that's in there. That's the person that, as Ada said, you're holding that person. You trust the others. They've already been through the exercise many times, but you're making sure, or doing reverse high kneeling. That's the most classic one of people to fall down, especially if they're on a tall reformer and they don't understand that they're going to fall down that first time. Everybody's going to fall down.